Hey, we're here today with Chérif, the founder of the Hub in Dakar. Thank you for making the time for us.
Oh, thanks for contacting me.
Very welcome. Chérif, just to start this off, what led you to become the founder of the Hub? What's the backstory?
Well, it stems from one funny story to this. So I told you earlier that I had another company, and I remember inaugurating my first company, and I rented this other gallery, right? And things just went haywire. And Sobel was actually there; he was hosting, and it just turned into a huge mess. Fights broke out, etc. Then I realized that I wanted a platform of my own. I didn't want to ever have to go to anybody or rent any place. And I also needed a platform for all the work that we were doing at House of Jouvence. And as far as I remember being a kid and thinking that I wanted to build a school for arts because there's not much of those in Dakar. There's the Conservatoire, tout ça, but that's public owned. There's no privately owned art school. And the opportunity just popped, and we took it. At first, I opened the hub with my mom. I was actually abroad. I was on a trip in New York, and she was just hunting for houses. And then she called me, and she was like, "Yo, I found this really nice house in Point. It's pretty cheap. Do you think we should get it?" I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So we got the house, and it took us 1 year to renovate the entire place. It literally didn't look like this. If not for the main building, everything was different. There was no garden, like it was very wild, right? So it took us 13 months to open, and we opened on May 2017. And surprisingly enough, there was a lot of people that showed up. And the first few months were a new experience for me. You know, I never work in restaurant management. I never work as a gallerist or as a curator. You know, I was a creative my own. And I think with time, the transition just became organic. Right? And if anything, being the director of the Hub Dakar took the part of my main job as opposed to being a cinematographer, which I was trained for, and which is my passion.
You were born in Senegal, then you moved to the US, and you came back to Senegal, or at least you're in Senegal part-time. What evoked that change? What contributed to you saying, okay, I want to go back to Senegal and start something here?
Well, do you want the whole story or just bits and pieces?
The whole story.
So, I was in the US. I went to study in the US, right? And then I graduated in 2012. I did a double bachelor in film and media and a second bachelor in psychology. And from there, I started doing consultancies. I worked with many African development centers, and I did a couple gigs here and there with a few African embassy. And at the same time, I was applying for my green card, right? And during that time, I literally couldn't work. So I had to make money one way or another. And that time was a really rough time for me because for the first time I was confronted to, I was born and raised here as a, upper middle class kid, quite spoiled at times or whatnot. So never was I left on my own. And at that time, my parents couldn't really help me out because things were really rough on the side too. So I started doing a bunch of stuff that I'm not going to mention here. And the more I got into that life, the more I realized that that's not something I wanted to do, that I was going to get caught up at some point. And from that, this feeling of patriotism that I have now was born. And honestly, to be honest with you, when I first moved to the US, I thought I was never coming back, if not for holidays. And I wanted to move to Hollywood and make a career for myself there. Then I realized, what's the point of moving to Hollywood when I could come here and build a Hollywood of my own? So started House of Jouvence there, and pretty much like you, I was collecting content. Right? I was going around and I was interviewing people of the diaspora. And the more I talked to people of the diaspora, the more I realized there were success stories, not always, not without any flaws, but it was still possible. And those people built something of their own as opposed to joining something that was already there, right? And the US market is pretty saturated on the creative sector. So I opened House of Jouvence there, and I moved back here, and I remember my first office was just a corner table that my dad had set up for me in his office. And so I hired one assistant and one graphic designer. And we didn't get our first contract until like 4-6 months later. At that point, I was ready to give up. And so we just started that. And the thing in Senegal, it works a lot by, you don't have to do a lot of marketing when you offer a service. I feel like your job speaks for itself. So from one contract to another, I guess our reputation grew because I like to say that we are quite unconventional in what we create. So from there, I raised up enough money to be able to invest in the hub along with my mom, and that's exactly what we did. And then my mom took her early retirement. I was left to handle the hub on my own, which I've been doing for the most on my own since the beginning. But see, the hub, that's the other story of the hub. The hub was really helping my mom satisfy a dream of her own that she had of creating a space. She doesn't have to run it. Just creating a space where cultures, ideas, souls will meet. And if the hub was to become financially unsuccessful, I would still keep it running just because I wanted to nurture that dream she had and that dream she passed on to me.
I like what you mentioned about, don't just be a follower, but have the imagination to create an entirely new space in the bigger sense of the word, and then create a new movement or create something new that is not there yet, versus jumping into a market that's already saturated. But this also requires confidence. It requires somehow being able to say, okay, I will do it and I'll figure out the how on the way. When was the first time that you had the feeling, I can do that, I know how to be that creator, versus, just looking for a job with someone else?
I feel like I was born this way. I've always been quite rebellious, I knew that taking a leap of faith was gonna happen, and that the day it happens, I wouldn't be afraid to do it. That's something I always knew. I feel like there was no moment that changed for me, because I lived most of my life like that. Well, when it comes to certain things, because on the social aspect, we were having a conversation, I told you, growing up, I was very insecure, and I was a very shy person. And I think the process of me being brave enough to take that leap of faith happened because of people that I met along the way, like Karima, like my parents, like Sobel. It also happened because of some of the experiences that I went to in the US that kind of forged me into somebody that quite literally didn't give a fuck if I fail or succeed in something, right? So there's that.
When you were sitting on this table with the two people that you hired in your dad's office, and you said, okay, now I need money. I'm starting this project of my own. People have put at least a little bit of trust in me to be able to sit here. How did you find your first client? You said you were almost ready to give up after 6 months. What did you do in those 6 months?
Well, in those 6 months, like I said earlier, I kept on collecting content, right? And just putting it out there, creating stuff on my own, just as a demo reel, I guess, right? My first contract came to my dad, he has been very helpful in the beginning in helping me make a name for myself here. So I actually remember my first contract, I didn't even have to do the job. So I walked in there, and it's this big global corporate, this French global corporate that works here. And I walk in there, and they usually give sponsorships to many young entrepreneurs. And I walk in there, I start talking to the guy, and he's obviously he's a businessman, he's very busy. He just turns around to his secretary and he's like, give him that much. I'm like, no, I don't want that money if I don't have to actually work for it, right? So from there, I did a advertising campaign that they didn't even ask for, like something that just went viral. And I think they only noticed it after a little while. I still took the money, right? But at least I didn't want to take the money and not do actual work, right? So from there, a lot of people that my dad was working with as an architect, they still needed marketing for their institution, for their brands or whatnot. So they reached out to me, and my first few gigs was a lot of photography gigs. One of my biggest clients is the Aga Khan Foundation for Architecture that is based in Geneva, and I met them to my dad. That was my first big paycheck, right? And they just had these photographic assignments and these photographic reports that you had to do. And given that I had quite the background in architecture with my dad, etc., I was able to do that. And from there, like I say, my first 10 clients were connects of my dad. And from there, people just started reaching out to me on social media, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, etc. From there. Now, I don't actually have to be at House of Jouvence to run things. I have a team. I just manage. I oversee the project, but I'm not hands-on anymore. If not for the media department that we are relaunching with the production of movies, feature films, etc., etc.
Now, so you study in the US. You say, okay, I want to start something in Senegal. What have been your biggest learnings since you came back here to start a business?
From being back here?
Yeah.
I think I went into business again with a very gullible approach, where I would trust that people have the same work ethic as you do, and I was quick to realize that is literally not the case. And many times I wanted to give up, because if anything that disappoints me is like social interactions. I don't mind losing a contract because I guess I was not good enough, or like I didn't win the gig. But I hate working with people, putting faith in people, and then realizing that they didn't see the bigger picture. They were just trying to get something on the spot at that moment for me from the contract and then move on. So I had quite a few experiences here where I really built this mistrust in the creative scene in Senegal. Although there's a lot of great people that I met through the Hub, but there's also, for every one or two great artists, I mean great in the sense of like ethics, there's like a dozen of them that don't care and that will use you for a certain agenda, use your platform for a certain agenda, and then just move on, right? So learning how to reshape how I trust people, you know, like my approach to when I first meet a person, when I'm supposed to do business with someone. Even if it's something I don't have no financial interest in, if it's just an artist that I'm investing in, I take the time to know the person on a very personal level before we go beyond into work and stuff.
That's an interesting maybe advice for people where you say, okay, you really need to connect on a personal level and not just say, so. Let's run into business, just to find out that people might have a very short-term mindset and approach to this. What's your bigger picture, your bigger vision for your projects? Because you are a multifaceted person, if I may say so. You have the Hub, you have your other creative agency. Now you told me about a project that's coming up How does all this tie together? Do you have a vision for that, or is it just spontaneously flowing out?
No, I think it's a vision that was already there and that is shaping itself as I go, right? Because the hub is the continuity of House of Jouvence. The hub is a platform for House of Jouvence, right? And now my plan is I really want to incorporate both businesses, whereas they work together hand in hand to create more, to create better, right? So our next big program at the hub right now is we're launching Campus Hub, whereas we are going to hold a casting call for visual and performing arts, and those people, let's say I get a good five actors. Those people are going to work on House of Jouvence projects through the hub. They will get the training here and then cross over to House of Jouvence that has a bigger. I think House of Jouvence is more of the distributor, whereas the hub is the incubator. You know what I mean? So it's our plan is to create this new school of artists. This something that you can see, like there's a lot of, the creative scene is pretty wide, and there's a lot of people in Senegal, but not a lot of people work together. And again, when they work together, it's to satisfy one or another agenda, but they don't work together for a common goal. You can look at in France, you have Jamel Comedy Club. So you have Jamel, the stand-up comedian, that came and opened this comedy club where he trained a bunch of them, and then they just ended up all being in each other movies, all doing Marrakech de Rire, this huge comedy festival. And that's literally what we want to do. We don't want these two projects to work separate. We want them to work in unison, so that we can have a wider and larger impact.
I find it very interesting, and when we came in here and I was looking at all the art on the walls, I was thinking, okay, so is this also a gallery, and then you sell the pictures and you take a share? And you said, no, we don't take a commission of the artist because we want to support them.
I guess because I can reflect myself in the artist. When I was starting, I would have wanted somebody to help me that way, and I can understand the financial burden of choosing to be an artist in Senegal. So, and I always like to think, I don't like to think that I'm richer than them or whatnot, but I know I have means to make that money faster and easier, right? So if I can take a cut of my paycheck, I don't mind doing that, as long as they need a motivation, and money is a motivation, as unfortunate as it is, right? So me taking those 50% that I'm probably not gonna spend on one night of partying doesn't really make sense, where that can drive them to exploring and developing their craft even more. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't know, a lot of people actually do tell me that I should be taking my commission, but I really don't. I don't feel like I'll ever do it. And just another thing, like to tell you that the hub is not money oriented. We don't ever charge a cover fee for the parties that we tour here, and most times the parties actually cost me more than what I get from the party, And I know it's a crazy business model, but it provides a certain gratification, to be able to say that we built this platform for people to not only create, but to mix creation and fun, to be able to develop themselves on their own or through us. That gratification to me is more important than getting a $500 on a painting that you're gonna waste anyways. You know what I mean?
You mentioned earlier some of the mentors that influence you. Could you share a little bit more about them?
I have 4 mentors. That's quite a lot. Sabel is one of them, because, and you want to know the story. When I first moved to the US, I got jumped really bad, and I got my ass beat. And the first person that I emailed was Sabel, who was a childhood friend. I was like, yo, Sabel, I don't think I can do it. I actually want to come back. And back then, keep in mind, I was 17, I was pretty frail, And so I sent him this long ass email, and I'm like, Soba, please help me get back. Please help me convince my dad to bring me back or whatnot. And he replied. He was very, most friends would have tried to comfort me, Whereas he did comfort me, but he also was brutally honest with me. And from there, I realized that I couldn't let him down. I couldn't let my parents down. I'll share the email with you. It was just such a... I remember crying so hard. I cried harder reading that email than I cried when I got jobs. And also somebody is also someone that was always patriot. Right? When we were younger, he had this project called Objective Back to help people in the rural areas get their high school diploma. And he will always try to convince us when we were very young, 16, 17 or whatnot, to give up our summers to go help those people practice and train for their high school diploma. And for someone that young to be doing such genuine efforts where he's not getting anything, like it's such... I think he was such a model. Even back then, I never told him that until we grew much older, but he was such a model to me. He was everything that I wanted to be in terms of what I could do for other people, as opposed to just feeding my ego, feeding myself in terms of what I was accomplishing. So there's him, there's Karima Grand Abbott, the director of Karimagination. And again, to come back to the talk of me being very insecure. There was this one instance where I remember, like I said, I was not the coolest guy in high school, right? And people used to poke fun at me, bully me quite often. I think it was more emotional abuse than physical bullying. And she told me once, I don't even think she put much thought into it. She's like, don't worry, you're gonna do greater things when you grow up. You're gonna do greater things, not only for you, but for other people. And also, well, I'm just throwing it out there, she said, you get even prettier girls than any of them can get. And it was such a motivation to hear that, given that most teachers in our high school didn't care for us on a personal level. But Mrs. Abbott, her husband, Michael Abbott, they were always so invested in us, in the sense that of course they would be severe, as any teacher should be, but there was again this honesty in the way they approach you. They will not just scold you, they will tell you why they're scolding you. They will tell you that they love you, but they still have to scold you because they know you have this potential. And I think Mrs. Abbott was that one person that did unlock the potential that I think I have. And I'm forever grateful for meeting her. For her, I think if I ever get an Oscar one day, she'll be one of the first person I'm gonna thank, just because she helped me break out of my cocoon, of this cocoon that I had built for myself, where I was the shy kid, always with his parents, not really trying to explore myself and the rest of the world. Right? And Magad Wad, which is an entrepreneur, she started Chosan, which is a cosmetic brand. And before that, I think she was someone that kept on reinventing herself throughout many brands that were quite successful. And as soon as she felt like she did as much as she could do, and she reached her full potential with that brand, she would just like start something new, And she inspires me in the sense that I want to diversify my catalog, my business catalog, as much as possible. And her ability to reinvent herself was just stunning to me. And we met at the Yale African Development Conference in 2012. And for someone to be that humble with that level of success, also, that's one of the other models that you want to emulate, as opposed to people here in Senegal, as soon as they get a little bit of money, they tend to get very arrogant. And she was so humble. And she kept true to herself. She lives in the US, but all of her companies are based in Senegal. So she's really contributing to the business ecosystem here. whereas she has been able to retain what made her her. She didn't let business corrupt her. She is not one of those business owners here that in Senegal, and it happens more than we would like to admit it. People switch so quick. They make their first 10,000 K, which is not even a lot of money business-wise, and then they just adopt this whole new personality because they feel like they need to adjust to this new status, and because also Senegal is a society that is very prone on image and on what you portray. So I was talking to my friend. That's funny because I was talking to my friend and I was telling him, well, if you were to get 100K right now, what would you do? And he was like, I'll just get a new car. I was like, well, you're a cinematographer, you should probably get new equipment. And he was like, and he told me, no, because with that new car, if I pull up to rendezvous and meetings, I have more chances of getting the meeting. And I was like, how do people think like that? Because you don't understand how much of people have this illusion of image in Senegal having a wider impact than it actually has. So you have a lot, also on the business ecosystem, you have a lot of influencers in Senegal. Like everybody is an influencer now. And the thing is, they don't make a living out of being that, right? They give you that illusion of living this lifestyle, this very glamorous lifestyle, where they also, but the simple fact that they post quite often gives you the impression that they are doing something. And those people become models and mentors to other young people here who tend to emulate and do the same mistakes that they do. So this image is being built, but it's superficial. There's nothing to back it up. So, and I think it was very much the case with, Ivory Coast had this digital boom a couple years ago where everybody was like, Ivory Coast is the next hub for Africa, which is, when you look at it now, that's not really what happened. Because Ivory Coast, most people were also selling the illusion of making money, whereas truth is, no, they were selling a lifestyle. And they were maintaining this lifestyle with the perks that come with being an influencer, right? And I just think that it's sad that those people become models and mentors to this new generation of artists. That, because I know so many artists that will be more worried about how uniform is their Instagram profile as opposed to how well is their paintings come out to be, right? And last but not least, I guess it's my dad. Just because I remember being this young and him putting me on his shoulders as he was painting the walls of his first office for his architecture firm. I think that's when I realized that I never wanted to work for anybody, if not for myself and for my family. And I think I have much more of an impact as an entrepreneur as opposed to an intrapreneur, where I have more control on the change that I want to bring, on the process of bringing that change. I don't have to wait for other people to take decisions for me. I don't have to run into a hierarchy. I don't have to run into a bus or whatnot. If I want to start something, if I want to start a social action right now, I just get in touch with other people like myself that I know working in those areas, and we can start something right away. We don't have to go through the process of submitting, waiting for fundings. We can fund things ourselves. If not, we can go look for the money somewhere. But at least, I think it's because Drake did say one day he likes being a musician more as opposed to being an actor because he has more control on what he does and when he does it and how fast he does it. And how fast you do something is how fast the change that can stem from it comes.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about work. And I mean, you're doing a lot of things. You're having a hub. I know how exhausting it can be to have a place where people come, connect, and that 24/7 you have your other business, although they tie into each other in the US. How do you manage that, and how do you manage that personally? Is that challenging?
I have to tell you, I manage it very poorly, if I have to be very honest. Opening the hub also opened me to a lot of health problems where I don't get much sleep, because I do have to juggle between the two. And just the mental strain of it is, I think it's too much for one person. Because you have to worry about two businesses, you have to worry about your social life, you have to worry about your family. And there are times where, I never shared it with anybody, but there was this one time I was having to an event here, and I had psychosomatic, en français it's called douleur psychosomatique, that come from stress. I literally was paralyzed, and I was sitting right here, and I couldn't move, so I had to fake it. And I was talking to some customers that happened to be my friend, and I had to stay here until like 3 a.m. And then I was transported to my apartment where my girlfriend called an ambulance. That's how bad it got. Whereas I don't get much sleep because I work here late, where I don't serve drinks, but I do have to manage, right? I have to make sure that we maintain a semblance of good service, and I have to do the logistics for the events. I have to prepare, I have to talk to the artists, I have to curate the exhibit. The thing is, I don't know how to delegate that well, so I do a lot of things myself. If you look at the visuals on the pages for the hub, I'm the one that does. I've done literally every single visual, although I have a whole team of graphic designers at House of Jouvence. It's just that I trust myself more with a certain task than I can delegate, right? And so it took a strain on my health to the point where sadly enough, I've developed some disorders. I've had in periods of stress, like I said, I have this paralysis. I have very vivid hallucinations at night sometimes. And then I went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with some extent of schizophrenia. That came from the burnouts. At first I thought it was just a burnout, that's why I brushed it away. But then I realized that this thing was lasting and it was not going, it was still here, even at periods where I'm relatively calm and I'm still anxious. And I didn't understand it. I would go to the beach with my girlfriend and be as anxious as me preparing for an exhibition or whatnot. And I just couldn't shake it off. And I don't know, sometimes I think that the mental strain that being a business owner has on you is not worth it. But also, I think when you're a business owner and that you do anything that has to do with social, you tend to dissociate yourself and your own personal health because you have those goals that you want to reach. So you don't care much for yourself. And as sad as it is, a lot of people are in that case, right? I know some people that will burn themselves out and not give up until they are laying on a stretcher at the hospital because they just couldn't do it anymore. And as sad as it sounds, we need more people like that, because those are those people that you can tell are genuine about what they do. And I know for a fact that Sobel will spend 3 months with no AC in a village under 40 degrees Celsius heat just to make sure that those kids that he helps with his high school diploma program do get the diploma, I know that Mrs. Karima Mrs. Abbott would spend nights up and just brainstorming on how to innovate her imagination, to the point that she would get very tired, but still going with it until she's satisfied with what she's proposing. And again, like I said, we need more people like that. You need more people that are able to, that need to care for themselves, but are able to dissociate themselves from the business and do what it takes. Because you do it right now, in a couple of years from now, you'll be able to rest. That's my philosophy. I hope it's true. I hope I don't just add more workload to myself. But it also takes, I guess because I felt in managing better because House of Jouvence was my sector, it was my field of work. So I knew what I was getting into. But as opposed to the creating side, I do have a restaurant in this place. And managing a restaurant is something that I had no experience doing. Throwing events, like throwing parties sometimes, just throwing any event, whether cultural or fun, it does require experience, and it's something that I had to learn on the go. So imagine learning, doing at the same time, running another business, dealing with your girlfriend, dealing with your family, and whatever comes out of that. At just 28, so sometimes I do think that I took too much upon myself. I guess the solution is just to delegate more. Have a team of trustful people, and which I think I'm building right now with Jara, with even my girlfriend. She's so helpful with the new interns that I got with the people that I was already working with at House of Jouvence, with my best friend, who's my accountant for both House of Jouvence and the Hub Dakar. I'm learning to let go of certain responsibilities, so I can feel better.
Thank you for sharing that and for the honesty. I think first of all, it's being addressed way too little by people who are in this game. And as you said before, oftentimes image is the one thing we see, but how do people really feel behind all of it? And then also, as an entrepreneur, let's say, if you want to drive your impact long term, the responsibility to find ways to manage all the things going on in the mind and outside in a healthy way, so that the impact can be long term. Thanks for sharing all that. So what would be your advice to a young person in Senegal today?
To take a leap of faith, to stand up for yourself. We live in a very patriarchal society, whereas you are not free from many of the decisions that affect your life, like whether professional or social. And I think that's that one thing that we're really missing. People don't really stand up for themselves here. And there are so many people that I know who want to be artists or actors or whatnot, but won't be able to do so just because their parents won't let them or give them the room to explore those sectors. I think giving it a try is always worth it, but you have to make that decision for yourself. You cannot let people pick your path for you. You have to be able to take that leap of faith and assume the responsibilities of that leap of faith, whether you fail or succeed on your own. Many of us middle-class young entrepreneurs, we rely too much on this comfort that this family has provided for us. Or we think that one way or another, my dad is going to get me a job or whatnot. But being middle class or upper middle class or even bourgeois doesn't mean that you stay in it your entire life. Things happen. I've seen it myself. I've honestly went from being quite comfortable to being very broke to being quite comfortable again. Things do shift. And that's why I think you have to take the responsibility for yourself, to build for yourself, and not wait for someone to give you the green light to do it. Take that green light, no matter if it means going to war with your family, with society, with other people in your field of work. Take that leap of faith. And more of a leap of faith, I think, is really going to war, because there are so many roadblocks on the way. There are so many people that are ready to chop you up, that are ready to make you lose faith in yourself. So it's really an inner battle that you're probably going to have to go through with your entire entrepreneur career in Africa, at least, right? Because I know for a fact that in the US, people don't really care for what you do. You do what you do. But people here have too much of a... You wouldn't believe the number of people that don't own a restaurant, that don't even own a kitchen, that tell me how to run my restaurant all the time. And that is so annoying. So you have to make that experience for yourself. You have to take that leap for yourself as well. That's my advice to you.
Thank you so much for sharing, man.
You're welcome. We good?
Yeah, we're good.